Hello F11 members and welcome to this issue 25's video tutorial, The Fundamentals of Post-Production Part 1. And what I'd like to do this month is take you through the whole process of resizing images. It may be familiar territory to you, but I always think it's worth going over, and there are some new features available in Photoshop CC which we can look at. And I'd like to look at how we resize pictures for different purposes, starting first with making small copies of pictures for use online, and also sizing up images in part 2 for use in printing or in commercial reproduction. So let's start with this picture of Prague, and what I want to do is I want to make a copy of it to be used in our Chasing the Light online magazine, this month's Behind the Lens feature. So what I have here is the full high resolution master copy of the image. I've done all my post-production on it, and if I come here to image size here, you can see there it's a 63.3 megabyte image, and those are the pixel dimensions. Those dimensions are determined by the camera's sensor, and my Canon 5D Mark III has a sensor that size. It's the original size. So far we've retained every precious pixel of information that we have. But our website has a physical dimension, and we can use an image only 740 pixels across as the maximum dimension for use in our online magazine. So I'm going to have to size this image down for use accordingly. So the first thing I'm going to do actually is just change the longest dimension, in this case the width because it's a horizontal image, to that 740 pixel number, and immediately it's scaled the image down. Now you can see here this command here, it's a lock, and if I hover my cursor over it, it says do not constrain aspect ratio. Just to illustrate what happens if I unlock that, and if I now alter one of these dimensions here, you can see it's stretching the image. Clearly we don't want that, and virtually all the time we keep that lock on, so that whenever one of these dimensions is changed, the other is changed accordingly to keep the original shape or aspect ratio of the picture locked. Now the next thing, so let's just put that back in 740 pixels wide, and I come down here to resolution. Now the first thing we need to explain is there are various ways of measuring resolution. For some reason it seems to be a standard to talk in terms of DPI, dots per inch. Now that's a term that is a legacy from the printing era, and really in photographic terms we're not talking about dots of ink on a printed page, we're talking about pixels. So DPI and pixels per inch are in all sense and purposes the same thing. The other thing is we could measure it in terms of pixels per centimeter, which gives a corresponding number of 118.11. Now we should be all metric, but for some reason we're not, and 300 DPI just seems to be a number that is very easily memorable. There are two resolutions that we tend to work with all the time, and they're basic standards. One is 300 DPI, sometimes 350 DPI. Generally speaking, it's an industry standard for commercial reproduction in magazines or whatever, and also for printing. All of the prints I make using our own printer here in the office, or when we send them out to a lab to be printed, are sized at 300 DPI. But for screen use, for anything on the website, for anything that's going to be looked at on the monitor, the standard is 72 dpi. And that's what I'm going to set now to size this image for use on the web. And the next thing is basically you can come down here and we're resampling the image. That means we're actually throwing away information, and if I come back up here it explains what we're doing. Our original was 63.3 megabytes and we're going to size it all the way down to a tiny 1.04 megabyte. Now on top of that we're going to JPEG compress it still further so it's even smaller, but we'll come to that in a minute. And it's asking me how I want to resample the image, and the drop down menu here shows us various options. These two top ones we'll come to in part 2 because they're to do with making the image bigger. We're actually making the image smaller and there's various options here. But I have to say this one here, bicubic sharper reduction, is one that's been built in specifically for sizing down images. Or there's the automatic option up here, and I've done tests and I must admit I prefer the automatic option. I found this one here tends to over sharpen the image a touch, so it just looks a bit edgy for my taste, but you could do your own tests to determine what you think. And then when I click OK, that's it, the image is scaled down. Now if I just magnify it up to 100%, and there you see down here right at the bottom corner it's telling me how much I'm looking at it. At 100% the image looks fine. Great for use on our website. Within the online magazine it will be that actual size. If I want to go any bigger though, we quickly see how that resizing has thrown away information, and immediately it's apparent because the image is pixelating there. There's simply not the information available to view it at that magnification. Now what's really important to consider when we're resizing images is we always, whenever we need a picture for a specific purpose, is we access the original high resolution picture, because clearly if I were to take this picture now and then resize it again, just too much information is being thrown away. So we just always come back to that master high resolution image. Okay, now I just want to save this picture, and so that Sharon's going to come along and incorporate it into one of our lovely looking web pages in the online magazine. So I need to save it to a folder, and I'm going to save it as a JPEG. So first thing I do is select my destination, and it's going to be here in the F11 folder, and it's going to be in the specific folder for issue 25. Can you believe it? 25 issues, 2 years of the online magazine. And now I'm just going to scroll down and select the JPEG option there, click on that and click Save. It tells me it already exists. Do I want to replace it? I'll say yes in this particular case to show you what we're doing. And at this stage it asks me how much JPEG compression I want to apply. Now what's happening here? JPEG is a form of compression that will make images smaller by throwing away information that the computer decides is unneeded. How much compression we choose to apply is up to us. If I, with the box here, click Preview, if I put a low quality setting in here, it's going to make a tiny image. You can see 63 kilobytes, but you can see the image here is starting to break up. There's a lot of compression. It's getting all blotchy and pixelated down here. It looks horrible. Whereas if I go to maximum quality, there's virtually no visible loss of impact or quality from the JPEG compression. I'm actually going to go with 11. It's not quite maximum quality, but it's giving me an image size of just 232 kilobytes. That's 0.2 megabytes. Very small image. That helps with our upload and download speeds. We don't have the fastest internet connection here in the big city of Melbourne Port, and but it's still very good quality. And that's my compression setting. You can do it either with this drop down menu or using the slider there. I think 11 quality setting for F11 is just natural thing to be doing. Okay, and I'll click on OK, and it's made the JPEG image and it's ready to be used. Let's just go back here. I could say to you actually that what we want to do is make this image, or for you to send us this image for use in the members gallery, in which case we ask you to send in your pictures with 1000 pixels, the maximum dimension. And as usual, there are numerous ways of doing this, resizing images. I'll just show you quickly here. In Photoshop there is a save for web function, which essentially does just what I've done using the image size commands. It's just another way of doing it. There's always many ways to skin a cat where Photoshop is concerned. But I actually find for managing pictures and resizing them, Lightroom is just so much quicker and easier to use. So I'm now going to show you how to do the same thing in Lightroom. Okay, so I'm looking at my collection of high resolution images, the master TIFFs here in Lightroom, and I want to resize this picture, and this time I'm going to be sending it by email for someone to view for possible use in a magazine. Or let's pretend, for example, that you are sending it to us for inclusion in the F11 members gallery. So we ask you to do that with the longest dimension 1000 pixels long low resolution JPEG. So all I do is I click on the export button. It asks me where I want to put that picture. I'm going to go to Documents, again to F11, and here we go, issue 25, members gallery. Okay, select the folder. I'm going to put it in there. It asks me if I want to put it in a subfolder. We've been through this many times before, but it's always good to go through again, isn't it? I do not want to rename the picture. And now it's going to ask me what I want to do with the image in terms of the sizing. And this is where Lightroom is so easy, so quick. So I ask it to make a JPEG. I'm going to specify a color space of sRGB, which is pretty much a standard color space for web use. Adobe RGB is the standard we normally work with, but for web use sRGB is the norm. Image sizing, it's going to ask me to, I'm going to ask it to resize to fit the long edge in this particular case, because it's a vertical image. It's going to be the vertical edge, the long edge 1000 pixels. Again, I've set the resolution to 72 dpi. I've asked to sharpen it for screen use, i.e. we're looking at it on a monitor, and that's it. And I click on export, and it's saving a copy JPEG to my specified destination. The master is not being affected, and I can't stress enough that what is so important is that we keep on coming back to our master high resolution images when we need to make copies for specific purposes, rather than resizing JPEGs numerous times. And I click export, and it's done. And really, that is a command, that is a function that can be done literally in a few seconds. So that's the business of making low resolution images for screen and web use. In part 2, what I'd like to do is look at the process of upsizing images, making them bigger for use as large prints or as billboards in London or wherever. Okay, we'll see you in part 2.